Hello, I am that Weems guy, and I am joined today by Steve Moses. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and ask him to introduce himself.
Well, Lee, good talking to you. Again, my name is Steve Moses. I've been a farms trainer since about 1994. Uh, I'm currently a content contributor for CCW Safe, as well as a content contributor, and I manage customer support for the Farm Trainers Association. I'm still an active trainer. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1994, taken a lot of really good classes. Probably, the ones I'd probably kind of like throw out there for people's consideration is I've taken many of the Range Master instructor courses. And Alan and Guy Schnitzler, my partners, are not Alan and Guy Schnitzler, Alan McBee and Guy Schnitzler, my partners, and I are all joining Tom at Mead Hall in October to do the master instructor class. So uh, I was a reserve deputy constable for 18 years. I had the very rare privilege of being a team member on a multi-precinct special response team. I am also licensed in the state of Texas to not only conduct executive protection, but teach it. That is, I have a level 4 personal protection officer instructor certification, and I've got a few other instructor certifications that I think kind of help round me out as an instructor. So, uh, very glad to be here today.
You mentioned being a Texas constable. If you would explain to our listeners and viewers what it is that a Texas constable does, because not every state has constables, and then their duties vary from state to state, the ones that do have them.
Well, in Texas, the constable is primarily involved in the civil process. In terms of civil process, some of the rural counties actually have the sheriff's deputies do that. But in a lot of the counties, and there's a lot of counties in Texas, especially the larger counties, that's a separate function. It is an elected position. You have to be a licensed TCO law enforcement officer in order to perform constable duties. And the duties of the deputies typically revolved around civil process, court duty. One of the things that we did have some issues with is we were called to serve writs of possession. And in some of those instances, oh, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And some of those tenants kind of had a skanky background, a tendency towards violence, and they did not want to be evicted. So a team was formed in order to deal with those, potentially dangerous situations, as opposed to just having 2 or 3 deputy constables go out there and perform that ad hoc without any coordination whatsoever.
Right. For those unaware, a writ of possession is a fancy court term, say, for you're getting thrown out of your house. And as you can imagine, lots of times people aren't happy about that. And they vent their anger on the person that's actually there serving the court paper, who actually has no control over whether or not you're getting evicted. But those can be very, very, very dangerous situations.
We had a few exciting ones, I will have to say.
All right. Now, I'm familiar with your background, and I do believe that you are a black belt in Taekwondo and a brown belt in BJJ.
That's correct. I have a black belt in Taekwondo via the World Taekwondo Federation. That was something that I earned in the 1980s. And I'm currently a Helson Gracie Jiu Jitsu brown belt.
All right, cool. Um, the reason I wanted to talk with you tonight involves instructors and the relevancy of their training being true to their certifications. In particular, I know that last year or year before we had the issue out of, I believe it was White Settlement, Texas, where there was the
Yes, sir.
unfortunate incident in the church, and the one member on the church security team, you know, performed a pretty serious feat of marksmanship under duress with a headshot at 15 yards, and immediately courses sprang up all over the country from firearms instructors, church security, armed security for churches, etc. And I, I go look at these guys and I would click on their link, go to the web pages, and look at their backgrounds. And I would see things like NRA, basic pistol instructor, or whatever the equivalent of USCCA is. But I would see no background that had anything to do with having ever professionally performed a security function, nor any certification in that area. And folks, church security and firearms are not exactly the same thing. They're not even close. And so Steve has got considerable experience in that. So I'd like for him to speak on that issue.
Well, I appreciate that. I was on a mega church, church security team for 7 years, almost 8 years. Relatively large church. The campus was capable of probably having 20,000 people uh, come over a weekend. It had four satellite campuses, and I was on part of the initial team that was formed up, and I eventually became a shift lead. Which what that means is anytime that the team was active, I was the person that was basically responsible for uh, conferencing with the security director, positioning the team, responding to any small crisis, large if there was indeed a large crisis. And it was something that I did for 7 years, almost eight. And that was in conjunction with my having been a firearms instructor and a martial arts instructor for nearly 2 decades by that time. So not only did I get to look at that from the perspective of someone that was actually in the team, making things happening, responding to incidents, but I also got to see that from the lens of an instructor. And we were involved in many instances. We had a lot of people that cycled in and out of the team. So we were constantly training team members. At that time, I had decided to go ahead and get my level 4 personal protection officer certification. So I was also working for an agency in which we were doing executive protection and personal protection for various clients and everything. So that was something that I did for a long time. It was something that I enjoyed. And once I was no longer on the team, and then it became much more widespread, the interest in teams, then I started teaching classes on church security and offering blocks of instruction. I probably did it 3 times at various tactical conferences.
Sure. If you could give us just a quick synopsis of things that a security team that would be involved in that have nothing to do with the firearms component.
Well, about 99% of the matters that the team are involved
Uh,
do not involve a firearm. Uh, if you are forced to use a firearm, it's because all of your other perimeters of security have failed. And at that point, typically something bad is going to happen. And it may very well be bad for you, your principals, the persons you're there to protect. And again, none of us want to get engaged in a firefight within the walls of a church sanctuary. So we tried to do, when I say tried, we actually did everything that we could that would prevent such an incident from ever taking place. And in the event that it might be pending, to be in a position where we could intervene in such a way that we were far much more likely to have a positive outcome.
all right, excellent. I have a background dealing with a lot of event security. I worked every home football game for a Southeastern Conference football team for 10 years. I've dealt with a lot of events with over 100,000 spectators involved,
Well,
numerous others with 10 to 15 to 20,000 spectators involved. And then things even including former presidents visiting the area and everything. And the one striking difference that I see between that and a house of worship, because this does encompass more than just Christian churches, is in none of the instances in which I was working was there an evangelical mission involved. We had we could actually form a perimeter and could turn people away, and a lot of the events had tickets for admission. It was very simple. If you didn't have a ticket, your admission was not even a question. That's different than a church that's asking, unto the least of you, please come. That's reaching out to people and trying to get them to come in. Uh, the troubled person, that's who the church is supposed to be there to help. And that's not necessarily conducive to excluding problems. Am I right on that?
no, No, you're absolutely correct. And again, the majority of the persons there that are, evidencing signs of anxiety or stress or some other, emotional discomfort, they're coming to that house of worship for a reason. And it's not to injure others. They're looking for solace. They're looking for comfort. They're looking for, they want to be in a position different than where they have. And if you think about it, think of all the many times that people said, I came to church, my life was just a complete train wreck. And once I started attending church and or any other house of worship and meeting people and getting engaged, it was a complete turnaround. And so what we want to do is we want to have a very friendly and inviting environment. It's not nothing we want to do is to send off that vibe as we are armed security. And if you're going to come here and cause trouble, we're going to deal with it. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, the better teams operate in a very low profile
Mhm.
type operation. That is, we don't want to stand out from anybody else that's at the church, whether they're the greeters or the ushers, parking lot attendants, the people in the child care area. We don't want to stand out. We're there to protect you, but by the same token, we're also wanting to make sure that those people that need our help can actually get in there and attend the service.
You said something key there, low profile. In event security that does not have the evangelical component, a lot of the security is the deterrent factor in shows of force and numbers. And, we were told to stay spread out and to keep moving so that it would look like there were more of us than there actually were. We wanted it every time somebody turned around, like, oh, well, there's another cop. You know, I don't necessarily want to attend a church where I'm looking around, it's like, why do they need all these armed guards? Maybe this isn't where I need to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing too is I worked a lot of event security. As a matter of fact, I was the sergeant in the reserve department, which meant that I was responsible for staffing events in the Tarrant County area in which my precinct was located with officers for various events. And so, I mean, we've done, events where it was like the Republican Club, or it was the local Northeast, Tarrant County annual chamber, festival, et cetera, et cetera. So we spent a lot of time in uniform and we did exactly that. We had radios. We were not, well, I'm not saying that you didn't have radios on the church security team, but ideally we didn't want us to look any different than the ushers or the greeters that were parking people and helping people, find the right place. And to that end, we stood in our uniforms, we were in key locations, we moved around, but we largely acted independently of each other. And in a house of worship security team, that is not possible. You absolutely have to identify the most vulnerable parts of the facility itself, including the grounds, because actually more violent crime takes place out in the parking lot than it does inside the church facility. So we needed to have coordination and we needed to have the right person, and that is someone that's trained, that's competent, that understands what the operating order is, what they can and they can't do. They understand state laws regarding use of force, because you can very much get yourself in trouble.
Mhm.
One of the things I'm always concerned about, Lee, are those people that think, oh, I'm on a church security team. I now have achieved magical law enforcement powers. The entire time that I was on that house of worship team, I was actually law enforcement. And I'm like going, I'm not going to get involved unless I have to get
Right.
involved. The opposite is true. The other thing is that, well, I was law enforcement, so I'm going to, I'll take a position in the church security, in a church security operation. Well, you're not really prepared for that. And so one of the things that you have to do is you have to get everyone working in harmony. You need to have those levels of communication. You need to be in your place at the right time, and you need to be prepared to support another church security team member if that church security team member needs assistance, with the exception of if you're in a key area, you can't be mud sucked out of place.
Right.
That is, you don't want everybody leaving the sanctuary. You don't want everybody leaving the children's area. So you had to understand what your position is, what your role is, what you were expected to do. And that's something that people that say, okay, well, I've done a lot of shooting courses. And actually, there's a lot of people that are more than NRA pistol instructors. They have pretty impressive backgrounds, but now
Mhm.
they're teaching church security. And I'm like going, you're teaching the active shooter response
Right.
portion of church security. And if we can do everything correct, then that incident will never take place.
Right.
And by the same token, you are not prepared to deal with all of the events that might take place that might not only get you in trouble, but it could get your house of worship in trouble also. So these are all
Right.
things I think, persons that are contemplating doing house of worship security should take into consideration.
Yeah, you touched on something there is like the perception of having law enforcement power. Yeah, in Georgia, this legislative session that just ended in the spring, our arrest by private person law was repealed. There,
Oh,
yes, uh, for 100 and something years, we've had this particular arrest by private person statute, and basically anybody had the same right to, the powers of arrest that a peace officer did to a certain degree. And there were just different procedures that had to be followed prior to this law. Well, we had the incident in Brunswick where the gentleman was out supposedly jogging, and the other three guys confronted him, and they ended up shooting the guy and killing him. Well, the governor's response to that was we need to address the the citizens arrest law. And it stormed through the House, it stormed through the Senate. Several of us testified at the Senate hearing, and then I reached out I didn't go to the Senate hearing, but I reached out to some members of the legislature. And now it is illegal for a private citizen in Georgia to detain a person. And, I pointed out the fact that, okay, so you're telling me that as a private citizen, if I see an old lady getting robbed, that under our deadly force statute, I'm authorized to use deadly force to intervene in that because it's falls up under the deadly force statute, but I can't wrestle him down and tackle him and hold him until the cops get there.
yes.
So I
Yes,
can
sir.
kill him, but I can't arrest
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
him.
And the interesting thing about that too, Lee,
Yeah,
is that you have to be real careful if you choose to detain
right,
or arrest someone, even in those states, and Texas is one of those states
right.
where private citizens can indeed, make a, citizen's arrest. What we have always instructed the students taking our classes is that you never want to make a citizen's arrest. As a matter of fact, if you can get the person off the property, regardless of the incident, then do so and then turn that over to law enforcement.
Hmm.
The only time that I, encourage our students to lay hands on a person and detain them is because that person right then is a serious threat to either the team members or other people in the sanctuary. So if I've got someone that's trying to fight everybody, we will take him down and we will hold him. If it's someone that is creating a public disturbance, which actually that's an arrestable offense,
Hmm.
uh, we're not gonna arrest them. We will ask them to leave. If they won't leave, we will call law enforcement. We will have them criminal trespass, and we will stay with them
Right.
until such time that law enforcement can arrive and take over that situation. And I just don't think a lot of people know that, and B, they know how to actually accomplish it.
Right. And I think that goes right to the crux of this whole conversation is the quote firearms instructor that does not understand the laws that we just discussed and all that nuance. They are biting off a peck of trouble trying to hold themselves out to be an instructor for which they're not qualified to instruct, for a subject matter in which they're not qualified to instruct.
I believe that to be the case, and also you may very well put your students in a position where a situation is unfolding in which the students don't know how to handle that, and guess what they do? They do nothing,
Right.
and then that's when things escalate. And I'm not
Mhm.
one to be super critical after the fact. What happened in White Settlement, I think, was indeed very tragic. But when you saw that thing unfold on the video, you know, myself being the typical Monday morning quarterback and the
Right.
same guy that goes to the movies and spoils them all for my wife because that's not tactical.
Right.
Blocks don't have safety. I'm sitting here and I'm like going, oh, I saw all of these
Mhm.
opportunities to intercept that person and put yourself in a position where probably you could have foiled any attempt to, bring that shotgun from under that trench coat.
Right.
And I think in part that those gentlemen were, doing the best they could pursuant to their training, but I don't think the training was adequate. And I say that with
Right.
all
Right.
respect because, there were two people that lost their lives, another person that was critically injured. And, all respect to the first member of the church security team that in the face of what he saw was happening, he
Right.
actually attempted to take a responsive action.
Right. And that brings to mind too one of the differences between a non-evangelical security mission and the evangelical one is that all the events that I've heard, the guy showing up in the summertime wearing an overcoat, we would have intercepted him in the parking lot and we
Right.
would have had a chat. Now, I'm not saying he would have been detained. I'm not saying, anything along those lines, but he would have known right from the start that he had been noticed and that there were eyes on him. And, that's things that you can do from private sector security that's different from the church environment. And I know I keep harping on that, but it's a different game. It's a different game, a skill set altogether.
It's a high stakes game, also. It's a high
Right.
stakes game because there's a lot at risk. Not only, your own personal freedom and perhaps finances, but, you can do damage to the church. You can do damage to the church's reputation, what makes them difficult to attract, new members. And I keep saying
Mhm.
church, I do mean house of worship. It's
Right.
just kind of, it's a Texas, Oklahoma thing,
Yeah.
you know, especially rural. And
Mhm.
but the thing is that, and then again, if you do not act properly, other people can get hurt. A lot of events that people aren't prepared to deal with involve domestic violence.
Yeah.
Basically, there you have a couple, they break up. One member is typically the female, not always, but typically the female. She attends church. Uh, she may have a temporary restraining order against him, uh, and decides, okay, she's meeting guys at the church, or there is someone at the church, perhaps the church leader that's counseling her. And some of the advice that she is getting is that she doesn't have to put up with that.
Right.
Well, he comes there, he has an encounter, then you need to get involved. And how do you do that in such a manner that you can either de escalate that, or if said gentleman does not want to be de escalated, deal with it long before anyone gets hurt. The other thing that I think persons interested in doing a house of security should understand is that probably your chances of getting injured probably are going to come more from a physical beating
Mhm.
or perhaps even an edged weapon. We'll certainly say a physical beating than they are with a firearm. And so then the question becomes, are you prepared for that? I mean, when you're standing there, say conversation distance, 3, 4, 5 feet from a gentleman, and he's bigger and younger and more aggressive looking than you, and he launches himself, at you. Okay, tell me again about that magical 1 second draw
Mhm.
and what you think that's going to accomplish. Matter of fact, I would contend that even if you have a full second to act, you won't be able to get that gun in properly.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you've got a gun into a fight. It can very well become a gunfight.
Well, that 1 second, 1.5 second draw, whatever people like to claim, is a lot different when it's a timer and a known stimulus than, oh my gosh, he just shot Charlie.
Absolutely.
or he's
Absolutely.
or he's beating me in the face is my stimulus that we're in a fight. Going back to the domestic violence aspect of it, children in the nursery involved in a custody battle. That's a
Exactly.
big deal. You know,
Okay. So what do
husband,
you happen? Mhm.
yeah,
Go ahead.
husband shows up or ex-husband shows up and he wants to leave with his child,
Mhm.
or they're in the process of getting divorced. And so there's no court order determining custody. And he's showing up and by God, I'm leaving with my child. Well, at that point, he's got every legal right to leave with that child.
He
But
does.
as Johnny Protector, no, ma'am, I'll stop this.
You're sticking your neck out there.
Yep.
You need to be trained how to handle that situation, what you can and can't do, and the importance in many instances of being a very good witness and having someone in a position that can communicate that to law enforcement immediately and basically tell them the gravity of the situation. We followed him to the car. This is what he's driving. This is the direction he went. This is the tag number, and here's his name.
Mhm.
And at that point, we just kind of have to turn that over to you know, to law enforcement to handle that.
There you go. Now, I know that you're involved with an organization that has developed a church security program or training
Yes, sir.
program, or excuse me,
Yes, sir.
House of Worship security training
House of
program.
Worship Security Team Instructor Development Course. Yes, sir.
Right. Would you please tell our listeners and viewers about that program and how they can find out
Well,
about it?
I appreciate that. We had our first class. We refer to that very much as a beta class. It was a 3-day class, a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We had multiple blocks that covered various aspects of House of Worship security. Basically, first of all, what is House of Worship security and what is the big picture? We had legendary defense attorney Don West come in and teach a block on general use of force laws. And then we talked about scenarios in which knowledge of use of force laws might apply to a specific incident. We did 2 shooting blocks, including a scored test in which we showed the instructors methods of instructing church security team members, the majority of which are not trained very well with a gun. Matter of fact, it may be the first firearms class in which they've ever participated, where we try to get across, okay, here's some foundational knowledge that we believe these teams need to know how to do and how to achieve that within a house of worship environment. We went ahead, we had Caleb Causey come in and do an immediate action medical response, because in many instances, if you're on a team and you or someone else suffers a penetrating wound, whether it's from a firearm or an edged weapon, seconds count. And if you don't have on hand the base materials to start addressing those, there's a good probability that that person
Mhm.
may really be in a lot of trouble. We went on. We talked about how to set up a video surveillance system for those houses of worship that don't have one in place. For instance, if you're a team member, or let's say if you're an instructor, or you're going to instruct students that are going to go to churches, bring back this knowledge and then say, hey, we need to get a video surveillance system in, and how can we do this cost effectively, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of a wired versus non-wired situation. We did that. FTA, let's see, I think I would call him training coordinator, and also a content contributor, and also someone that's very instrumental in what CCWSAFE is accomplishing. Rob High, former Oklahoma City Police Department use of force expert. He was a training coordinator for the Oklahoma City Police Department. He actually did a segment on empty hand response to these particular persons, if indeed they did attempt to punch you. They attempted to stab you with a knife. If they threw you to the floor and did the old, schoolyard bully, aka UFC, ground and pound, beat down from the mount position. He did a block on that. And let's see, we did one other thing. Oh, And we also did, Alan McBee, my partner, did a block on dealing with suspicious visitors and the proper way to make contact and then assess what's going on and responding accordingly, which could be anything from, oh, you have your friendly interview. Basically, you're not trying to put pressure, you're not trying to drive this person away from the facility, but just, kind of see where are they at? Is this a person that we think is a threat? If the person's not a threat, we bid them a good day and see if we can help them get to where they want. If we have concerns, then the team leader is responsible for assigning another team member to basically shadow that person the entire time they're at the facility. And then last, if this is okay, this is absolutely, we can't let you in at this time. Turning that person away in such a manner that they don't find offensive. If they do, staying with that person and managing that situation until law enforcement can arrive.
All right, folks, you just heard a description of a very well thought out house of worship security training program. If that's not what you're seeing in the description of the other church security programs that you're looking at taking, you need to walk away and you need to walk towards Steve and this product with FTA or something comparable. And quite frankly, I don't know if anything comparable.
I don't think there is at this point, but I actually hope that changes in the future. I hope that some of these people that we are turning out, as a matter of fact, I know they are, Tim Reedy, Ed Monk. We had some really stellar guys in this class, and these people all attended this class. And so now they're in a position where, in my opinion, they very, very well could teach a house of worship security class. One thing I did leave out, which I, just kind of dawned on me when you were talking, is we also extensively went into a program where we talked about how to set up an operating plan, what should be in the operating plan, suggested ways of positioning your members before the service, during the service, between the service, if there are services, following service, and after the service in such a way that one, you've got coverage in key places, you had people that could support each other, and how to rotate that team so no one stayed in the same place twice. On the team I was in, there were several times where they had 3 services on Sunday, and we were short a couple of times. And so I attended and listened to the same service 3 times. And I'm telling you, complacency sets in on number 2, and then complacency just caves your head in on number 3. So just that ability to keep, your people engaged, have the people that need to be in the correct position, and also the importance of not only training, but continuous education. We also covered active shooter response. So I'm sorry I wasn't really well prepared for my response there, as I keep throwing this stuff out, and everything, but that was pretty much it. So I think it's real important that if you want to do house of worship security, that you need to have knowledge. And by that, I mean quality knowledge in all of those areas, and understand A, what that means, and B, how to do it.
All right, excellent. Yeah, tonight we've really hit the subject hard from the house of worship security standpoint, but everything we're talking about applies to other areas of firearms training as well. For instance, someone who is their only instructor certification is, and I'm sorry for all the NRA basic pistol instructors, it's the low hanging fruit. They've got certification as NRA basic pistol and their state level license to carry, or CCW, whatever your state calls it, licensure course, but yet you're teaching force on force and room clearing. Now, if those certifications are paired with years of experience as some sort of security force or law enforcement that actually goes in and does those type things, or the like, then okay. But if it's just those basic pistol or basic firearms instructor certifications, stay in that lane. And buyer beware. Look at that. The name of a course may seem very interesting. You look at, oh, that's cool. I'd love to learn how to do that. Well, vet the instructor, make sure they're qualified to be teaching what the product is. Steve, any thoughts on that?
No, I absolutely agree. And the other thing that I would really, kind of throw out is that the average person that's on a house of uh, security team that is, uh, they're not a skilled shooter.
Uh-huh.
The course that they're taking with you may be the first course that they've ever attended. You will be shocked at the holsters and the handguns that show up. I've had them show up with Walther PPKs. I've had them show up with LCPs in pocket holsters without a spare magazine. And the thing is, if you're giving these people a false sense of confidence that they are prepared to deal with something that, as we saw in white settlement, can just be horrific, uh, we're doing them a disservice. And I really want to, I mean, I think everybody likes money to some extent. The money is not that important. What you should, as an instructor, much of your reward comes from the fact that you know that you've empowered other people correctly and that you have taught them something that if they will commit themselves to and give some thought and continue to train, may very well save their lives and the lives of others someday.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, tell people how they can get in touch with you, find out about your offerings, both through your own company and through FTA.
Okay, very good. My company is called Palisade Training Group LLC. My partners are two excellent longtime firearms instructors, Alan McBee and Guy Schnitzler. Hani Mahmood is one of our contract instructors. We use him. We're actually going to use him later in the year for a couple of courses. Our website is ptgtrainingllc.com. I can also be reached at steve@ccwsafe.com and stevemfta@gmail.com. In reference to a future House of Worship class, right now we're looking at that format very, very carefully. We want to do some reformatting. We knew at the time that there were things that we were wanting to add, maybe some things we wanted to eliminate, maybe move some things, perhaps have somebody, teach this block. And right now, it's probably going to be later in the year before we'll announce our next class. And that will probably be in the Oklahoma City area. So if you want to stay in touch with me, please feel free to do so. And when I know anything about a future class date, I will go to some effort to make that information public.
Absolutely. Folks, if I lived in Texas, or especially in the area in which Steve operates, I will be at every class that he and his group offered. I know Steve and all of his assistant instructors and partners, and they are top-notch trainers and top-notch people. And unequivocally, if it wasn't a 10 to 12 hour drive for me to get to their classes, I will be at everything that they offered. And maybe one day when I retire, I'll show up, even with being a 10-hour drive.
We have a spare bedroom for you.
Well, thank you. The other thing that goes along with that is that Steve works with the Firearms Trainers Associates, and I'm not wanting to bash any of the other firearms instructor insurance programs that are out there. I actually have policies from two different companies, one of which is FTA. And part of that is that the guy that's on the other side of the camera right now handles adding other ranges to your insurance plan. And I think the longest I've gone after sending you an email for one of those is less than 12 hours.
Yes, sir. I try to look at my email. If I have a request for one, I will get it out the same day. And sometimes if I see it at 10 p.m. at night, I'll knock it out at 10:01 p.m.
Yeah, I think overnight's the longest I've had to wait on one of those wanting to add a, what we're talking about, people here, say you're an instructor and you're going to teach at a new range, and that range wants a specific rider on your insurance policy to protect that range. Well, Steve's who you contact for FTA, and he sends you that insurance certificate. And sometimes that's a long drawn out process from some of the other companies. Like I say, well, Steve, the longest I've waited is overnight.
I apologize for that.
No, I'm pleased and I'm tickled. Steve, was there anything that I should have asked you about that I didn't?
No, I don't believe so. Those were all very good questions. You made me kind of look inside the dark recesses of my mind for some of that information in those back Rolodexes. One thing I might say about the Farm Trainers Association, if you will allow me, is the
Sure.
Farm Trainers Association is an organization that provides legal liability coverage for firearm trainers that is backed by insurance. And what that simply means is that they cover your legal costs in the event that you're named in a lawsuit stemming from a training event, with the sole exception of something that was just, you just did something totally stupid and unlawful, and no one in their right mind would do that. And you typically don't see that except on YouTube. And some of those things I have seen, I'm like going, uh, oh my God, I hope no one else sees this but me. But the same persons that will represent you are the same people that make up the critical response team for CCW Safe. And so you're talking about a vetted team with years and years of experience, including a tremendous amount of court appearance representing clients on the CCW Safe side. Is the very same people. And let's see, Kyle Sweet, Mike Darter, Stan Campbell, Gary Eastridge, Rob High, they're all former law enforcement. So a part of the system for CCW Safe was kind of based around the police system in the manner in which they handle critical incidents that involve law enforcement officers. The CCW Safe model is based upon the same type of thing. So that's about as much pitch as I feel, that I should give, probably too much. But regardless, they're fantastic guys, and we would love to have you all join us.
Outstanding, outstanding. This whole YouTube thing is funny. I just started putting videos up in the last month or two, and right now I think I'm growing at in the last 28 days 780 something percent. I know that that's not going to last, but I looked at some things on YouTube this weekend, and I noticed that Ernest Langdon has just under 18,000 subscribers to his YouTube page. Now, Ernest is a world champion pistol shooter and the builder of phenomenal firearms, or customizer of phenomenal firearms. 18,000 subscribers. And some guy like named Scoot 007 or something like that, that does product reviews in his backyard, had over 1 million subscribers. Not
We're obviously doing something wrong.
Yeah, those two things are not the same. And but I guess it's all about what the fancy little thumbnail and the intro that holds people's attention beyond 30 seconds and gets them to subscribe is. As of last night, the audio from all of these interviews is actually uploaded to Anchor. If you go on Anchor and just search for Lee Weems, all of the audio is available. And Anchor is part of Spotify. And so if you search that Weems guy on Spotify, you'll find the audio from all of these interviews. So when this interview gets uploaded to YouTube, the audio will also get uploaded to Anchor, so you can listen to it in your car on your way to work or home if you so choose. Folks, if you're enjoying this content, please share the links on social media, because I'm only going to do so much of that. So if you want to help this spread and help keep it going, that's what you can do to help. Steve, as always, it's great to talk with you, and thank you for being here tonight. I'll give you the last parting shot here.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I cannot tell you how pleased I was to be asked to do this, and do want you to know that I still have been working pretty heavily on my revolver skills after your excellent block at TacCon, and I'm in the process of having a little 3-inch K-frame revolver built for me right now as a result. And you kind of shed some light on the advantages of the revolver and how to minimize the disadvantages. So every time I get an opportunity, I want to train under you, and I'm sure I'll see you at TACCon. I'll be wherever you are.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm actually going to be teaching the revolver class again this year. We're not going to do 3 blocks of it this year. I think we're just going to do one. The other class that I'll be a part of is Eric Gilhouse,
Oh yeah.
John Dobb from KR Training, and I will be doing a round table on the aftermath of a deadly force incident.
Oh, I'll be there.
Yeah, because we know what Eric went through with his, and then John was involved in one in his home, and then I've been involved in a couple as an administrator on the investigative side with deputies involved, and we're just gonna, we're gonna have a good presentation. I think we're going to shed some light on some things that people just aren't aware of. Like for me, I'm going to talk about the changes from a deadly force incident that occurred in 2016 to one that occurred in 2020, and just how the media spotlight from everything that was going on in the country, how it changed the investigation. And so I think some people learned some things they're just not aware of.
Excellent. I'll definitely attend that one.
Absolutely. And what are you teaching? Do you know yet?
It's going to be managing dangerous interactions in transitional areas. So basically, what we're kind of working on is a block of how to better manage don't shoot encounters. I got that term from Claude Werner. He said that too many people say shoot, don't shoot. He said the reverse should be true. So I'm like, okay, I'm changing my verbiage right now. And basically, things that can be done that perhaps minimize the fact or minimize the possibility that you actually do get into a deadly force engagement, things that you can do and things that you need to be able to do that give you perhaps the skill, the tactics, and knowledge to wait just a few seconds longer before that gun comes out. And perhaps it wasn't needed, and perhaps you were just charged with felony assault or brandishing. And so we're going to kind of focus on that. There'll be a small shooting block associated with it, but that's the topic we're going to work on for next year.
All right. Well, then I know my mission between now and the time the schedule comes out is to make sure that we're not teaching at the same time.
I will talk to Tom. Actually, I'll talk to Tiffany.
There you go. That's the right answer. That's the right answer. Well, thank you for being here tonight. And everyone, I'm that Weems guy. This is for first person safety.